Hey everyone, welcome back to Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. I'm your host, Jim Chapman. And just quickly, before we get into today's episode, I want to thank all of the patrons that have supported the show really since the beginning. I can't thank you enough. The show could not exist without you. It's just that simple. If you can't be a patron, totally get it, totally understand. Please just share the show. That's a great way to support, and I love and appreciate you regardless. And as I like to do, I'm going to jump right into it today. And I actually dropped a breaking news bonus, I call those, when it was announced that some folks had been arrested, 5 people actually, including 2 doctors, in the death of Matthew Perry. And of course, Matthew Perry was a star on the show Friends. Absolutely loved that show. I was around 19 when that show came out, and it was the perfect time for a show like that to hit for a guy in his youth at that time, like myself. But what a lot of us didn't know at that time, and what would come out many years later, was his struggle with substance abuse. He really fought that hard. Man, that monkey was on his back. And he went public with it, wrote a book about it just a few years ago that was a New York Times bestseller. So I've got a lot to cover. Not quite sure how many parts this series is going to be, but I want to start out kind of at the beginning of this saga, and that is when Matthew Perry was actually found dead at 54 years old in his hot tub at his home in Los Angeles. And I'm going to read a quick article for you that was released the day after, and it kind of give you an idea of what police had to go on at that point, and we'll talk about it. Friends star Matthew Perry was found dead Saturday in a hot tub at his Los Angeles home, this from law enforcement sources. He was 54 years old. Authorities responded about 4 p.m. to his home, where he was discovered unresponsive. The sources, who spoke on a condition of anonymity because of the investigation was ongoing, did not cite his cause of death. No drugs were found on the scene, but a source said prescription medications were recovered at the home. LAPD Captain Scott Williams, who led the robbery homicide division that is investigating Perry's death, said the cause of death may not be known for some time, but at this point, foul play is not suspected. The cause of death will be determined by the coroner's office, which on Sunday officially deferred its finding until further testing is completed. Saturday evening, yellow and black LAPD crime scene tape blocked off the entrance to his home just off the Pacific Coast Highway at the crest of a hill with sweeping views of the Pacific Ocean. Shortly after 7 p.m., multiple helicopters whizzed overhead. Perry's mother and her husband, broadcaster Keith Morrison, who incidentally, y'all, is the popular personality on Dateline NBC. So he also arrived at the scene and declined to comment. An LAPD officer at the scene said he had no information and that he did not know when it would be forthcoming. There was a dark side to the life of one of television's most beloved funny men, however. In his 2022 memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing, Perry recounted his lifelong struggle with addiction to alcohol and opioids. He wrote that he had his first drink at 14, but didn't recognize the signs of alcoholism until he was 21. Since then, he estimated he spent more than $7 million in efforts to get sober, including multiple stints in rehab. His substance abuse also led to a number of serious health issues, including a 5-month hospitalization in 2018 following a colon rupture that left him with a 2% chance to live through the night. And it was fueled, he said, by the pressure to land the joke in front of a live audience night after night. Nobody wanted to be famous more than me, he said. I was convinced it was the answer. I was 25. It was the second year of Friends, and 8 months into it, I realized that American dream is not making me happy, not filling the holes in my life. I couldn't get enough attention. Fame does not do what you think it's going to do. It's all a trick. So that gives you an idea of the struggle that Matthew Perry was facing $7 million, y'all. He spent trying to get sober. And to me, that's total proof that addiction is a horrible, hard thing to beat. Even when you got money to spend and you have all the success that Matthew Perry did. So the police investigated hard. And look, this happens all the time to people who aren't worldwide famous like Matthew Perry was. And typically not a whole lot happens. You usually just find out they OD'd and that it was over with, right? This was a very high profile case and the police were under a lot of pressure and they weren't going to let this just lie. And it took a while, but just a few days ago, they made 5 arrests. And let me read this to you. 2 doctors and the ketamine queen charged in the overdose death of actor Matthew Perry. 5 people, including 2 California doctors, a reputed drug dealer known as Ketamine Queen, and Matthew Perry's live-in personal assistant have been charged in connection with the actor's accidental overdose death. Perry, who was 54, was found face down in a heated end of his pool at his Pacific Palisades home on October 28th of 2023. The LA County Medical Examiner's Office attributed his death to acute effects of ketamine, an anesthetic with psychedelic properties. According to an 18-count superseded indictment, and y'all, I have those indictments for all these people, so I'm going to go over them in these episodes. But we'll continue. According to that 18-count indictment, Jasveen Sangha, a North Hollywood resident who sold ketamine and other drugs, provided Perry's assistant with ketamine that ultimately led to the actor's death. The assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa, and I may be mispronouncing that, injected Perry with the drug the day he died. The syringe was provided by Dr. Salvador Plasencia, who had also distributed ketamine to Perry and his assistant in the past. Sangha, who's 41, and Plasencia, who is 42, were both arrested Thursday in Southern California, and that was this past Thursday from this recording. They were both charged with 1 count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine. Sangha, who's a North Hollywood resident, also holds dual citizenship in the UK and was charged with several other drug-related offenses. A lawyer for Sangha did not immediately respond to a request for comment. She was arrested in March in connection with a separate federal drug case, but was released after posting a $100,000 bail. Iwamasa, Perry's 59-year-old assistant, pleaded guilty on August 7th to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine causing a death. He admitted to repeatedly injecting Perry with ketamine without medical training, including on the day he died. Dr. Mark Chavez, 54, a physician based in San Diego, has agreed to plead guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine. He admitted to selling ketamine to Plasencia, including some that he had diverted from his former clinic. And the 5th defendant, Eric Fleming, who is 54, was described in court papers as an acquaintance of Perry's who helped him obtain the ketamine. He admitted to distributing ketamine that killed Perry, drugs that he procured from Sangha. The family of Dateline correspondent Keith Morrison, who is Perry's stepfather, said in a statement that they welcome the news of the law enforcement action. LAPD said in May that they were working with federal authorities to investigate the source of the ketamine Perry had consumed. Ketamine had been a popular party drug for decades and in recent years has shown promise as an alternative treatment for depression. A growing number of clinics offer it as an infusion or injection for a wide variety of mental health problems. Perry has been undergoing ketamine infusion therapy to treat depression and anxiety, but his last session took place more than a week prior to his death. The medical examiner noted that the ketamine in Perry's system could not be that infusion therapy given its short half-life. The levels of ketamine in his body were high, equivalent to the amount used for general anesthesia during surgery. The coroner ultimately ruled his death an accident. Contributing factors include drowning, coronary artery disease. So that was the breaking news And before we get any further, I want to talk about a couple things. First, I want to educate those that may not be aware of what ketamine is. And for all intents and purposes, ketamine is a hallucinogen. It's an anesthetic that has some hallucinogenic effects. It distorts the perception of sight and sound and makes the user feel disconnected and not in control. It is referred to as a dissociative anesthetic hallucinogen because it makes patients feel detached from their pain and environment. Ketamine can induce a state of sedation, immobility, relief from pain, and amnesia, so people will have no memory of events while under the influence of the drug. And it's abused for its dissociative sensations and hallucinogenic effects. Ketamine has also been used to facilitate sexual assault, primarily, y'all, because if you're under the influence of ketamine, you won't remember things that occurred while you were under the influence. It is approved as a medical product as an injectable short-acting anesthetic for use in humans and animals. And they also have a nasal spray version that is used as treatment for depression. And on the street, it has several different titles: Cat Tranquilizer, Cat Valium, Jet K, Kit Kat, Purple. Primarily, people know it as Special K on the streets. Super K, it's known as, and Vitamin K. And how do people abuse it? They inject it. They can also make it into a powder and snort it or mix it in drinks. And you can even smoke ketamine when it's in its powder form. An overdose of ketamine can cause unconsciousness and dangerously slowed breathing. Probably one of the biggest side effects of the drug, from what I understand, is it really slows your breathing down. So not a fun drug, and definitely not a drug to be played with. So we're going to get into the indictments. And the first ones we're going to talk about is Jasmine Sangha, who you heard me refer to as the ketamine queen. And we're also going to talk about Salvador Plasencia, who is known as Dr. P. And this is the actual indictment for those two individuals, and I'm going to be going over with you. It was actually released on August 14th of 2024, just a few days from this recording. And we're going to talk about the individual counts. And on count 1, defendant Jasmine Sangha, also known as the ketamine queen, was a resident of North Hollywood, California, who used her North Hollywood, California resident, known as the Sangha Stash House, how about that, to store, package, and distribute narcotics, including ketamine and methamphetamine. Defendant number 2, Salvador Plasencia, also known as Dr. P, and co-conspirator Mark Chavez were medical doctors licensed to practice in the state of California. Defendant Plasencia and co-conspirator Chavez had previously applied for and obtained authorization from the DEA to dispense, administer, and prescribe narcotics and other controlled substances, just so long as the prescriptions were for legitimate medical purposes. Ketamine was a Schedule III controlled substance that was FDA approved for induction and maintenance of general anesthesia during surgical procedures. Due to the medical risk associated with ketamine, it was widely accepted in the medical community that a healthcare professional was required to monitor the patient who had been given the ketamine. While monitoring the patient who had been administered ketamine, it was necessary for the healthcare professional to have access to certain life-saving equipment. This includes a defibrillator, a supply of supplemental oxygen, equipment to monitor the patient's heart rate for breathing, and medication to ensure the patient's safety. Defendant Sangha also knew that the unsupervised and improper use of ketamine can be deadly. As alleged, in count 3, on August 26 of 2019, defendant Sangha sold ketamine to a customer, namely victim CM. And I don't know who CM is, folks, but this person died of a drug overdose within a day of the drug deal. As a result, a family member of victim CM informed defendant Sangha of the death in a text message saying, "The ketamine you sold my brother killed him, and it's listed as the cause of death. Within days of receiving this text, Saga confirmed that the ketamine can kill by conducting a Google search for, and get this y'all, can ketamine be listed as the cause of death? Co-conspirator in the Matthew Perry case, Kenneth Iwamasa, was a resident of LA County and employed as the live-in personal assistant to the victim, Matthew Perry. Co-conspirator Iwamasa had never received medical training and knew little, if anything, about administering and treating patients with controlled substances, as defendant Placencia well knew. And remember, y'all, Placencia was a doctor. Co-conspirator Eric Fleming was an acquaintance of victim Matthew Perry and a resident of Hawthorne, California. Defendant Placencia, co-conspirator Iwamasa, co-conspirator Fleming, and co-conspirator Chavez were aware that Matthew Perry had a history of drug abuse and addiction, and that Matthew Perry had also sought on multiple occasions assistance to treat that drug addiction and maintain his sobriety. So what they're doing there, folks, is they are laying it out. They're laying out who these people are. And they're laying out that they well knew that Matthew Perry had an addiction problem. And that's important. And then they go into what they call the object of the conspiracy. And a conspiracy, y'all, is when two or more people plan or conspire against another individual in an illegal way. Something that they know they're not supposed to be doing, but they're doing anyway. And it's important to prove that there was a conspiracy here. So they say beginning on a date unknown and continuing until at least on or about October 30th of 2023 in LA County within the Central District of California and elsewhere, defendants Placencia and Saga conspired with Iwamasa, Fleming, and Chavez, and others known and unknown to the grand jury, to knowingly and intentionally distribute ketamine, a Schedule III controlled substance. Then they go into the manner and means of the conspiracy, and they say the object of the conspiracy was to be accomplished in substance as follows. Co-conspirator Iwamasa would communicate with other co-conspirators, including defendants Placencia and co-conspirator Fleming, about purchasing ketamine to distribute to Matthew Perry. The co-conspirators would use encrypted messaging applications and coded language to discuss the drug deals, including referring to bottles of ketamine as Dr. Pepper, cans, and bots, B-O-T-S. After discussing ketamine orders with co-conspirator Iwamasa, co-conspirator Fleming and defendant Placencia would communicate with their ketamine sources of supply, including Saga and Chavez, respectively, about inventory, price, and availability of ketamine to sell Iwamasa and Matthew Perry. Saga would operate and maintain the Saga Stash House in North Hollywood, California, which defendant Saga would use to store, package, and distribute narcotics, including providing ketamine to co-conspirator Fleming so that co-conspirator Fleming could sell it to Matthew Perry. Iwamasa would meet with co-conspirators, including Placencia and Fleming, to purchase the ketamine for Matthew Perry. Defendant Placencia would distribute ketamine to co-conspirator Iwamasa and Matthew Perry outside the usual course of professional practice and without legitimate medical purpose, including by teaching Iwamasa how to inject Matthew Perry with the ketamine. Selling ketamine to Iwamasa to inject Matthew Perry, and injecting ketamine into Matthew Perry without proper safety equipment, and failing to properly monitor Matthew Perry after Placencia injected Matthew Perry with ketamine. Using the instructions and syringes provided by Placencia, Iwamasa would inject Matthew Perry with the ketamine that was sold to Iwamasa by Placencia, Fleming, and Saga. On October 28th of 2023, using syringes provided, this is important, this is the day he died, y'all. On October 28th, 2023, using syringes provided by Placencia, Iwamasa injected Matthew Perry with multiple doses of the ketamine he received from Fleming and Saga, resulting in the death and serious bodily injury of Matthew Perry. That's murder, y'all. They're saying right there he murdered Matthew Perry. They investigated this case and they came up with some examples of how they tied this all in. They say on September 30th of 2023, after learning that Matthew Perry was interested in obtaining ketamine, Placencia contacted Chavez about purchasing ketamine so he could sell the ketamine to Matthew Perry. On September 30th of 2023, in text messages with Chavez, Placencia discussed how much to charge Matthew Perry for ketamine, saying, "I wonder how much this moron will pay. Let's find out." Then, also on September 30th of 2023, Chavez confirmed he was willing to sell ketamine to Placencia and then sent a photograph of ketamine lozenges that Chavez had previously obtained by writing a fraudulent prescription in the name of VB without VB's knowledge or consent. We don't know what VB stands for. It was somebody. Also on September 30th of 2023 in text messages, Chavez and Placencia arranged to meet in Costa Mesa, California, so that the defendant, Placencia, could obtain liquid ketamine and the fraudulent VB prescription from Chavez. Also on that same day, Chavez met with Placencia in or around Costa Mesa, California, and sold Placencia at least 4 vials of liquid ketamine lozenges from the fraudulent VB prescription, gloves, and syringes. Also on that same day, in text messages to Matthew Perry, Placencia confirmed that he planned to leave vials of ketamine with Matthew Perry for self-administration, stating, "I will give you the first dose if you would like, and then leave supplies with you." Also on that same day, after injecting Matthew Perry with ketamine at Matthew Perry's residence, Placencia gave instructions to Iwamasa on how to inject ketamine and left ketamine and syringes with Iwamasa so that Iwamasa could administer ketamine to Matthew Perry. Same day, Iwamasa paid Placencia approximately $4,500 in cash for the ketamine. Same day, Placencia sent text messages to co-conspirator Chavez describing the meeting with Matthew Perry, stating it was like a bad movie and confirming that Placencia would send Chavez payment soon. Then, on October 2nd of 2023, Iwamasa sent Placencia a text message in coded language stating that Iwamasa wanted to purchase vials of ketamine and non-injectable sessions, want to end up with 8 bottles of Dr. Pepper, not just 8 sessions. Same day, in response to the text message, Placencia confirmed with the words, "Understood." That same day, ahead of a planned meeting between Placencia and Matthew Perry, Placencia told Chavez, "If today goes well, we may have repeat business." Same day, in a text message to Placencia, Chavez discussed selling ketamine to Matthew Perry, saying, "You should sell him the troches." He was referring to the fraudulent VB prescription. Same day, defendant Placencia traveled to Matthew Perry's residence to inject him with ketamine and sell additional ketamine, including ketamine lozenges. Same day, Placencia updated Chavez about his visit to Matthew Perry's residence, including stating he intended to administer 360 milligrams of ketamine to Matthew Perry over a span of approximately 1 hour. On that same day, Placencia injected Matthew Perry with the ketamine and sold Iwamasa liquid ketamine and ketamine lozenges from the fraudulent VB prescription in exchange for cash. And on that same day, in text messages with Chavez, Placencia discussed needing additional ketamine to sell Matthew Perry. Also on October 2nd, to obtain more ketamine to sell Matthew Perry, Chavez placed an order for 10 vials of ketamine from a wholesale distributor of controlled substances. Also on that day, Chavez submitted a license authorization form to a different wholesale distributor of controlled substances for the purpose of obtaining additional ketamine to sell to Matthew Perry. Among other things, the license authorization form contained false statements, including that the ketamine will not be sold to a third party, distributed, or used for any other purpose. Then, on October 4th, in text messages using coded language, Iwamasa told Plasencia he needed to purchase additional bottles of ketamine, stating, "I will need to get more cans of Dr. Pepper from you today. I can come to you and make it convenient." That same day, Iwamasa told Plasencia he had successfully injected Matthew Perry with ketamine, noting, "Found the sweet spot, but trying different places led to running out of ketamine." Holy smokes. That same day, in a response to the text message, Plasencia advised he could deliver more ketamine to Iwamasa and said, "I don't have ideas on how to get consistent results." That same day, in response to Iwamasa's text message requesting to purchase ketamine now, Plasencia stated he was currently retrieving 4 bottles from his source, and his source, y'all, he was referring to was Chavez. That same day, Plasencia traveled to Irvine, California to purchase 8 vials of liquid ketamine from Chavez. That same day, Plasencia injected Matthew Perry with ketamine and sold multiple vials of ketamine to Iwamasa. That same day, in text messages to co-conspirator Chavez, Plasencia asked whether co-conspirator Chavez was having any trouble finding more ketamine. In case this continues with this guy, noting, "I think we would be best served not having him look elsewhere," because Plasencia wanted to be his quote-unquote go-to. Also on October 4th, 2023, Chavez sent a text message to Plasencia stating he was working on getting more ketamine. Also on October 4th, to obtain more ketamine to sell Matthew Perry, Chavez submitted an order for 10 vials of ketamine to a wholesale ketamine distributor. Also that same day, to obtain more ketamine to sell Matthew Perry, Chavez completed a Know Your Customer DEA questionnaire and submitted it to a distributor, knowing the document contained material that was false, including Chavez responding no to the question, "Do you sell any products to other practitioners?" Then on October 6th of 2023, in response to co-conspirator Iwamasa's advising defendant Plasencia that he needed more ketamine because he only had 1 left, Plasencia traveled to Matthew Perry's residence and sold 1 or more vials of ketamine to Iwamasa in exchange for cash. Then on October 7th of 2023, Iwamasa sent text messages to Plasencia seeking more ketamine and asked if he could pay with something besides cash because it's getting hard to get to the bank on the fly with all that's going on and everything happening so fast now. On October 7th of 2023 at approximately 11:29 p.m. and in response to text messages from Iwamasa, Plasencia confirmed he had 2 bottles of ketamine to sell and agreed to meet in Santa Monica, California, stating, "I'm at 3rd Street Promenade now if you would like to meet now." On October 7th of 2023 at 11:47 p.m., co-conspirator Iwamasa told Plasencia that he sent $3,000 by electric payment and I'm bringing 3 more, leaving now. Then on October 8th at 12:30 a.m., really the same night, y'all, Plasencia met with co-conspirator Iwamasa on the street corner in Santa Monica and sold co-conspirator Iwamasa ketamine in exchange for $6,000. Wow. On October 9th of 2023, after Chavez received a ketamine delivery from a wholesale distributor, Chavez sent text messages to Plasencia stating, "Are we still meeting tomorrow? We got the shipment today, 1 box of 10 vials." Same day, in response to that text, Plasencia stated, "Great. Yes, I'm going to probably come to you midday." The following day, October 10th of 2023, Plasencia met with Chavez in Irvine, California, and purchased 10 vials of ketamine, which Plasencia intended to sell to Matthew Perry. That same day in text messages, Placencia and Awamasa agreed to meet in Long Beach, California, so that defendant Placencia could transfer more ketamine to Awamasa. That same day, Placencia met with Awamasa and Matthew Perry in a public parking lot in Long Beach, California, where Placencia injected Matthew Perry with ketamine while inside of a vehicle. While there, Placencia also provided additional vials of ketamine to Awamasa in exchange for partial payment in cash. Then on October 12th of 2023, in text messages, Awamasa asked to purchase more ketamine from Placencia and noted he would pay Placencia the money he owed for ketamine that Placencia already provided. Same day, Placencia traveled to Matthew Perry's residence in LA County to sell additional ketamine to Awamasa and Matthew Perry, for which Awamasa paid defendant Placencia approximately, you ready for this? $21,500 in cash. On October 12th of 2023, after defendant Placencia injected Matthew Perry with a large dose of ketamine that caused Matthew Perry to freeze up and his blood pressure to significantly spike, Placencia told Awamasa something to the effect of, "Let's not do that again," and nonetheless left additional vials of ketamine with Awamasa for injecting Matthew Perry. On October 13th of 2023, in response to a text message from Placencia asking if Chavez would be interested in running a ketamine clinic with him, Chavez said, "Interesting. And as long as we are doing things on the up and up, we can start ASAP. All done legally without any shady stuff. Having them come to the clinic will ensure this." Same day, in response to defendant Placencia asking, "Oh, so you don't agree with the method I am currently doing?" Chavez stated, "It's not what I think, it's what an entity like the California Medical Board would view it, or the DEA for that matter." Then 11 days later, October 24th of 2023, despite less than a week earlier telling a patient at his clinic that Matthew Perry was too far gone and spiraling in his addiction, Placencia placed an order for 10 vials of ketamine from a wholesale distributor so that Placencia could offer to sell the ketamine to Matthew Perry. Then on October 27th, 2023, in text messages, Placencia offered to sell additional ketamine to Awamasa, stating, "I know you mentioned taking a break. I have been stocking up in the meantime. I am not sure when you guys plan to resume, but in case it's when I'm out of town this weekend, I have left supplies with a nurse of mine, and I can always let her know the plan. I'll be back in town on Tuesday." So y'all, a lot of that particular section of the indictment covers Dr. Placencia. And now we're going to get into more of Saga. So we'll back up a little bit and we're going to go to October 10th. Awamasa sends a text message to co-conspirator Fleming seeking to purchase ketamine, stating, "How much do you want per bottle and what is the nice tip that you want?" Same day, in response to the text, co-conspirator Fleming stated, "Perfect, I'll bring it to you, getting price now. I need some upfront to pay when I pick up and the rest when I deliver." Same day, using a signal encrypted messaging application, Fleming stated with Saga about obtaining ketamine, saying, "Hi, Jace, it's Eric. Let me know your address. How many vials do you have available?" Then, using that same encrypted messaging application, Fleming and Saga communicated about the type and price of the ketamine that Saga had available to sell. That same day, Fleming told Awamasa that he could obtain vials of ketamine for $300 and sent a photograph of ketamine he proposed selling and requested a $1,000 brokering fee. On October 11th of 2023, using that encrypted messaging application, Saga told Fleming that her ketamine was high quality and offered a sample of the drug for Matthew Perry to try, stating, "It's unmarked, but it's amazing. He'd take one and try it. and I have more if he likes. On October 11th, Fleming sent a screenshot of Sanga's message that I just told you about and stated, "I just got this from my person. She only deals with high-end and celebs. If it were not great stuff, she'd lose her business." Also on October 12th, Fleming contacted Saga to obtain a sample vial of ketamine and advised Saga that the ketamine was intended for Matthew Perry. Also on October 12th, after communicating with Saga about her ketamine supply, Fleming advised Iwamasa that his hookup, meaning Saga, was able to get the kind that is used for intermuscular. I guarantee it's going to be amazing, and sent a photograph of an unlabeled, unmarked, clear glass vial of ketamine to show Iwamasa what they looked like. On October 12th of 2023, Fleming told Iwamasa that he was willing to facilitate the drug deal but needed to make money, stating, "I wouldn't do this if there wasn't a chance of me making some money for doing it." On October 13th, Fleming drove to the Saga stash house in North Hollywood, California, and purchased a ketamine sample for Matthew Perry, which was contained inside an unlabeled, unmarked clear glass vial with a blue cap. On October 13th of 2023, Fleming drove to Matthew Perry's residence and delivered the sample ketamine vial to Iwamasa, knowing that Iwamasa would be injecting Matthew Perry with the ketamine. On October 13th, Fleming told Iwamasa he could obtain however many vials of ketamine as Iwamasa requested, stating, "Let me know how many, and I'll confirm what she can get." But as of now, she said she can fill any size order. On October 13th, 2023, in response to text messages, Iwamasa told Fleming he would purchase 25 vials for $5,500 plus $500 for you for logistics. On October 14th, 2023, Fleming drove to Matthew Perry's residence located in LA County and collected cash from Iwamasa. On October 14th of 2023, Fleming drove to the Saga stash house and purchased 25 vials of ketamine from Saga. That same day, after obtaining the ketamine, Fleming drove back to Matthew Perry's residence located in LA County and delivered the ketamine to Iwamasa. Iwamasa then sent a text message on October 23rd of 2023 to Fleming requesting to purchase more ketamine, stating, "Can we do same as last time again over next 2 days?" On October 23rd of 2023, in response to the text message, Fleming confirmed he could obtain more ketamine, stating, "It will be the same product. You want the same amount? Put the 5,500 together ASAP, and I'll come get it as soon as possible to get it all done tonight." On October 23rd of 2023, Fleming traveled to Matthew Perry's residence and picked up approximately $6,000 in cash from Iwamasa, which would be used to pay defendant Saga for additional ketamine. On October 24th of 2023, based on information from Saga, Fleming sent text message updates to co-conspirator Iwamasa about the delivery and timing of the ketamine, including stating that defendant Saga's ketamine source, which defendant Saga referred to, get ready for this, as master chef and scientist, would make the supply available, and that the ketamine was on its way to our girl, referring to defendant Saga. On October 24th of 2023, Fleming traveled to the Saga stash house, purchased 25 vials of ketamine from Saga in exchange for cash. As part of the transaction, Saga included ketamine lollipops as an add-on for Matthew Perry's large ketamine order. How nice of her. On October 24th of 2023, Fleming traveled to Matthew Perry's residence with the ketamine referenced and delivered to Iwamasa. Same day, Iwamasa administered at least 6 shots of ketamine to Matthew Perry. Jesus, this is so sad, y'all. Saga reached out to Fleming on October 25th, the next day, about anticipated future transfers of ketamine to Matthew Perry, stating, "Please let me know if you think there'll be another round because the scientist, he'll be gone as well. I'll have to know ahead of time to get that sorted out before we leave." Same day, Iwamasa administered at least 6 shots to Matthew Perry. The next day, He just delivered on the 24th, y'all, 6 shots of ketamine to Matthew Perry. Delivered meaning he injected him with it. The next day, another 6 shots. On October 27th, 2023, Awamasa administered at least 6 shots of ketamine to Matthew Perry. On October 28th of 2023, using syringes provided by Placencia, Awamasa injected Matthew Perry with at least 3 shots of ketamine, which resulted in the death and serious bodily injury of Matthew Perry. On October 28th of 2023, after she learned about Matthew Perry's death from the news, defendant Saga called Fleming using the Signal application, that encrypted app, to discuss distancing themselves from selling ketamine to Matthew Perry by, among other things, deleting the digital evidence on their cell phones. So they knew they were fucked at that point. On October 28th, 2023, Saga updated the setting on the Signal application to automatically delete her messages with Fleming and instructed Fleming to delete all of our messages. On October 30th of 2023, using that messaging application, Fleming sent the following text message to defendant Saga. Please call. Got more info and want to bounce ideas off you. I'm 90% sure everyone is protected. I've never dealt with Matthew Perry, only his assistant, so the assistant was the enabler. Also, they are doing a 3-month tox screening. Does case stay in your system or is it automatically flushed out? Y'all, this is awful. It's horrible. This guy was horribly addicted, and all these people are culpable in it. And let me just talk about this. I am seeing, and I'm enjoying seeing this, these dealers and these enablers of all these drugs, be it the doctors that are overprescribing them, the drug dealers that are selling them. I'm loving the fact that these people are having to pay the price, because this shit that I just read you today happens all the time. This is horrible. These people are feeding him his candy, right? And all they give a fuck about is money. And I'm sorry, but this shit pisses me off. And I'm glad to see these people going down. So I want you to hear the press conference. This is about 20 minutes long. It's the actual press conference that came out on Thursday with the police that filed this indictment and investigated this case. It's very interesting. And on the next episode, we're going to really get in deep and dirty with the ketamine queen, who she is, what she's done in the past. And we're also going to get into what culpability Matthew Perry's personal assistant has in his death and what I think about that. And obviously, it's a hell of a lot more than him just injecting Matthew Perry. We'll get into all that in our next episode. But right now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play that news conference from Thursday in its entirety. And here's that.
Related to the death of the actor Matthew Perry. Following Mr. Perry's death in October of last year, law enforcement, my office, and our partners represented on this stage began an in-depth, wide-ranging investigation. That investigation has revealed a broad, underground criminal network responsible for distributing large quantities of ketamine to Mr. Perry and others. This network included a live-in assistant, various go-betweens, 2 medical doctors, and a major source of drug supply known as, quote, the ketamine queen. We charged 5 defendants in this matter. These defendants took advantage of Mr. Perry's addiction issues to enrich themselves. They knew what they were doing was wrong. They knew what they were doing was risking great danger to Mr. Perry, but they did it anyways. In the end, these defendants were more interested in profiting off Mr. Perry than caring for his well-being. I'm going to talk about the indictment, the allegations, and the charges in more detail. On October 28, 2023, Mr. Perry was found deceased in his home. An autopsy was conducted following his death. That autopsy showed that he had died due to the acute effects of ketamine. Ketamine is a controlled substance. It has some legitimate uses, but it is also used illegally. It is used by people seeking to disassociate from reality. It can cause serious health effects, serious health problems, including loss of consciousness, including spikes in blood pressure, and including respiratory issues that can deprive the brain of oxygen. For that reason, it is a drug that must be administered by medical professionals, and the patient must be monitored closely. That did not occur here. This investigation focused on who supplied the ketamine to Mr. Perry. As many of you know, Mr. Perry struggled with addiction in the past. And on many occasions, he sought help for his addiction issues. The investigation revealed that in the fall of 2023, Mr. Perry fell back into addiction, and these defendants took advantage to profit for themselves. The two lead defendants in this case are defendants Salvador Plasencia and defendant Jasvin Sanya. First, I'll talk about defendant Plasencia. Defendant Plasencia was a medical doctor. He worked with another medical doctor, defendant Mark Chavez, to obtain ketamine. He then worked with Mr. Perry's live-in assistant, defendant Kenneth Iwamasa, to distribute that ketamine to Mr. Perry. Over 2 months, from September to October 2023, they distributed approximately 20 vials of ketamine to Mr. Perry in exchange for $55,000 in cash. Defendant Plasencia saw this as an opportunity to profit off of Mr. Perry. He wrote in a text message in September 2023, quote, "I wonder how much this moron will pay." He also stated in text messages that he wanted to be Mr. Perry's sole source of supply. He wrote in a text message that he wanted to be Mr. Perry's, quote, "go-to for drugs." As a doctor, defendant Plasencia knew full well the danger of what he was doing. In fact, on one occasion, he injected Mr. Perry with ketamine, and he saw Mr. Perry freeze up and his blood pressure spike. Despite that, he left additional vials of ketamine for defendant Iwamasa to administer to Mr. Perry. Of course, defendant Iwamasa had no medical training to speak of. Defendant Plasencia knew what he was doing was harming Mr. Perry. He had spoken to another patient in mid-October 2023, and he told that patient that Mr. Perry was spiraling out of control with his addiction. Nonetheless, defendant Plasencia continued to offer ketamine to Mr. Perry. Likewise, defendant Sanya knew what she was doing was harming defendants and also Mr. Perry. She took advantage of Mr. Perry by selling large amounts of ketamine to Mr. Perry over a 2-week period in October of 2023. She sold approximately 50 vials of ketamine for approximately $11,000 in cash. She worked with a broker, defendant Eric Fleming, and also the live-in assistant, defendant Iwamasa, to distribute this ketamine. Sanya and the broker, defendant Fleming, saw this as an opportunity to profit off of Mr. Perry. In a text message, the broker wrote, quote, "I wouldn't do it if there wasn't a chance of me making some money for doing this." Defendant Sanya sold the batch of ketamine that resulted in Mr. Perry's death on October 28th. Officers later searched defendant Sanya's home. During that search, they found what amounted to a drug-selling emporium. They found 80 vials of ketamine, thousands of pills containing methamphetamine, cocaine, bottles of Xanax and other illegally obtained prescription drugs, and drug-selling paraphernalia, including scales and ledgers. As I mentioned, the defendants in this case knew what they were doing was wrong. When they'd refer to the ketamine, they used coded language. They'd refer to it using terms such as, quote, Dr. Pepper, or quote, bots, or quote, cans. Also, defendants Plasencia and Chavez, as medical doctors, knew full well this was not the proper way to administer ketamine, and they even talked about that in their exchanges. And defendant Sonia also knew that she was doing something that caused great risk to Mr. Perry. In fact, during this investigation, we learned that several years before, in 2019, defendant Sonia had sold ketamine to another customer. That person died the same day. And a family member of that person sent a message to defendant Sonia telling her the cause of death was ketamine. Nonetheless, defendant Sonia continued selling drugs, including ketamine, including the ketamine that ultimately killed Mr. Perry. That other victim was a person named Cody McGlory. He died in 2019. As a result of this investigation, we have filed a drug distribution charge related to the death of Mr. McGlory. After Mr. Perry died, these defendants tried to cover up what they had done. On October 28th, after reading news reports of Mr. Perry's death, defendant Sonia wrote a text message to defendant Fleming saying, quote, delete all our messages. Likewise, after Mr. Perry's death, defendant Plasencia falsified medical records and notes to try to make it look like what he was doing was legitimate. It was not. We have filed numerous federal charges against the 5 defendants. These charges include conspiracy to distribute ketamine, distribution of ketamine resulting in death, maintaining drug-involved premises for that drug-selling emporium the defendant Sonia had, altering and falsifying records related to a federal investigation for those false medical notes and records that defendant Plasencia made, and multiple other drug trafficking counts. Of course, the defendants are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The penalties these defendants face are very significant. With regard to defendant Plasencia, the statutory maximum sentence he faces is 120 years in federal prison. And with regard to defendant Sonia, the statutory maximum she faces is life imprisonment. By filing these extensive and serious charges, we are sending a clear message. If you are in the business of selling dangerous drugs, we will hold you accountable for the deaths that you cause. This is nothing new for us. Since 2022, my office has filed over 60 cases against drug dealers who've caused the death of another person. These cases are known as death-resulting cases. They are labor-intensive cases, and we work with our law enforcement partners, including ones represented here today, to bring those cases. Our office is a national leader in bringing those cases. They're very important because every victim's life counts. If you are in the drug selling business and you're selling dangerous drugs, you are playing roulette with other people's lives, just like the 5 defendants here did to Mr. Perry. Defendants nowadays are on full notice that the products they sell could result in the death of another person. Therefore, if you're in the drug business, and despite these risks you continue in the drug business, you are pushed by greed to gamble with other people's lives, be advised, we will hold you accountable. I want to thank our partners in this case, the Los Angeles Police Department, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. These investigators did a phenomenal job digging into the case, looking at every angle to develop a case, a strong case, against not only those who killed Mr. Perry, but also Mr. McGlory. I want to note that these cases are important and will continue to collaborate with our law enforcement partners to bring them, to ensure that justice is brought to every victim. And finally, let me thank the prosecutors responsible for the investigation and the prosecution of this case. Those are Assistant United States Attorneys Ian Yanello and Xiaohan Tsai. And now I'd like to introduce Chief of Los Angeles Police Department, Dominic Choi.
All right. Good morning, and thank you, Martine. While it's tragedy that brings us all here together, I'm happy to stand here knowing that these dangerous individuals are no longer on the streets and they won't be able to harm anyone else. The Los Angeles Police Department and our partners here today, we're committed to investigating all cases like this, and it's regardless of someone's background or socioeconomic status. And just with all of our cases, this investigation was done impartially. We let the facts drive this investigation, and those facts led us to a group of individuals who were responsible for supplying and distributing to Mr. Perry narcotics that led to his unfortunate and untimely death. The group standing here today, it's a prime example how our partnerships and our collaboration can yield meaningful results. I want to thank LAPD, our Robbery Homicide Division, who's standing in the back there, the U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada and his team, the DEA and her team, as well as the U.S. Postal Inspection Service and their team for their hard work, diligence, and real patience. Now, I know people think this took a long time, but there was a lot of work, a lot of investigative strategies that went into this to make sure that there's a solid case and that we can pursue this in the courts. Our relationship with our federal partners, it helps us ensure that these criminals will have meaningful sentences and be an example for anyone that is willing to risk or jeopardize distributing and supplying unlawful or narcotics to anyone. And I just really want people to know that that is the message. You cannot get away with this regardless of your background or socioeconomic status. Breaking the law is breaking the law, and you are dangerous and you are jeopardizing lives. So thank you all of my partners for being involved in this and bringing us to where we are at today. And at this time, I'd like to introduce DEA Administrator Ann Milgram.
Good morning. Today we announce charges brought against 5 individuals who together are responsible for the death of Matthew Perry. Each of the defendants played a key role in his death. They falsely prescribed, sold, or injected the ketamine that caused Matthew Perry's tragic death. In the United States, most forms of ketamine are only approved by the Food and Drug Administration for anesthesia. A nasal spray version is approved for treatment of depression, but only in a certified medical setting. Here, Matthew Perry sought treatment for depression and anxiety and went to a local clinic where he became addicted to intravenous ketamine. When clinic doctors refused to increase his dosage, he turned to unscrupulous doctors who saw Perry as a way to make quick money. Dr. Plasencia and Dr. Chavez violated the oath they took to care for their patients. Instead of do no harm, they did harm so that they could make more money. Without performing any medical evaluation or monitoring, they supplied Matthew Perry with large amounts of ketamine in exchange for large sums of money, charging Perry $2,000 for a vial that cost Dr. Chavez approximately $12. As Matthew Perry's ketamine addiction grew, he wanted more, and he wanted it faster and cheaper. That is how he ended up buying from street dealers who sold the ketamine that ultimately led to his death. In doing so, he followed the arc that we have tragically seen with many others, whose substance use disorder begins in a doctor's office and ends in the street. Perry turned to his street dealer, Eric Fleming, who sourced his ketamine from a drug trafficker known as the Ketamine Queen, Jasveen Sangha. The ketamine supplied by Sangha would ultimately be the dose that took Matthew Perry's life. Sangha knew that the ketamine she supplied could be deadly, since in 2019 she had sold ketamine to Cody McLaury, who died at the age of 33. But despite this knowledge, she continued to sell ketamine and methamphetamine throughout Los Angeles. Matthew Perry's journey began with unscrupulous doctors who abused their position of trust because they saw him as a payday. And it ended with street dealers who sold him ketamine in unmarked vials. The desperation that led Perry to these individuals was not met with help, as it should have been from the doctors. But instead it was met with exploitation. Exploitation by those who should have guided him toward help. This betrayal of trust is at the heart of this tragedy. Since 2023, DEA has investigated nearly 500 drug poisoning and overdose cases just like Matthew Perry's. We run a national initiative known as OD Justice, where we work with our state and local law enforcement partners to conduct investigations after someone has passed away. And it is important to note that the national model we today have in every 50 state across the United States is based on the work that started here in Los Angeles. We began this work with our partners in the Los Angeles Police Department and with other local police departments and sheriff's offices in California, in the Los Angeles area, and with the U.S. Attorney's Office. And today it stands as our national model for this critical work. Together, as part of OD Justice, we work to bring justice for the lives that have been lost and to stop others from dying.
So there you have it. For Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.